Hello, ladies. Welcome. I hope that you all enjoyed your summer as much as possible. I decided to come on today and review this book because there are so many relationships suffering due to the current climate of what we're dealing with in society, with that thing that we're dealing with that I'm not going to mention. I'm going to read from the book Attachment Theory, A Guide to Strengthening the Relationships in Your Life by Thias Gibson. She is here on YouTube as the Professional Development School if you want to look her up. This is a really good book to read if you are someone who is partnered or married and you want to keep your relationship intact. The book will help you to understand not only your attachment style, but your partner's as well. Excuse me, I'm having a little bit of a tickle in my throat. If you're not familiar with what attachment style is, she breaks it down really well in this book. Attachment styles are developed from our childhood experiences and whether or not we had our core needs met. So if you're someone who may be struggling in your relationships, romantic or otherwise, this book really will help you. She talks a lot about triggers and how each attachment style has triggers that affect the way we show up in relationships. So the book is not a replacement for therapy, but it will help you to have compassion for yourself and your partner once you understand the triggers and attachment styles. Also, there are some sections in the book that will prompt you to write in answers or respond to the section that you just went over, and I did find that helpful. Instructions are included in the book on how to do that if you have the ebook. Now, and I want to say if you're having serious issues in your relationship, you may also find out while reading through this book and talking with your partner that they are not someone you can be with because of unhealed trauma from their childhood. If they are willing to go through the book with you, that's a good sign. If not, you're probably with someone who doesn't take relationships very seriously or just really are not ready to do the work because maybe it's just too painful for them. So I had to add that, and just to say, ladies, don't be offended if that does happen because there are many wounded men who refuse to do the work needed to heal. Men like this will always be on the market looking for something that does not exist. And don't worry about it too much because just as his issues prevent him from working through things with you, it will very likely be the same case with the next woman. So, just another note, if you really pay attention, you'll notice that men who flip the love switch quickly will switch it off just as quickly. And I just wanted to say that because there are red flags sometimes that we push through. If you're like a really compassionate person or if you really like the guy, so just pay attention to that. To if there's not like a slow warming up to you, but he just jumps right onto you, that's probably a sign that he does that with everyone. So just be aware of that. I was once dating a guy who told me that he believed that if you have to work too hard at a relationship, that means there was nothing there to begin with. And I soon learned that his definition of too hard meant him being accountable for his bad behavior. So just keep that in mind. So, anyway, with all of that being said, let's get into the book. There are 6 parts in the book. They are part 1, attachment theory. And in that part, this is where she goes through the basics and she breaks down the different attachment styles. And in chapter 2 of that part, she talks about how the theory applies to you, which is what I think I'm going to focus on. But before I do that, I'm going to read some of the sections that describe each of the 4 attachment styles and tell you what those are. But let me continue on with the contents. So part 2 is the basic 4. Part 3, strategies for strengthening your relationships. Part 3, overcoming negative interactions. Part 4, changing your outlook. Chapter 5, focusing on the here and now. She has it as chapters. It was at parts at first, but I I don't know. Okay, so it's actually chapter 3, overcoming negative interactions, chapter 4, changing your outlook, chapter 5, focusing on the here and now, chapter 6, cultivating wisdom through mindfulness and rain. Then she has references, resources, acknowledgments. So let me read to you first how to use this book. So this book is divided into 3 sections: an introduction to attachment theory, an overview of attachment styles, the techniques required to heal your attachment style. Within the first section, you will learn the history of attachment theory and understand how it has evolved over time to better encapsulate behavior that stems from childhood experiences. While there is no incorrect way to learn from this book, you will obtain the most value from reading all sections chronologically, since each section builds on those before it. The second section will delve into how attachment styles originate. This section will help you understand what attachment styles you and others in your relationships may have. Once you understand how your style is created, you can begin to understand what unmet needs you may have and how you project certain outdated beliefs onto your everyday life. From there, the third section will give you the tools that you need to reprogram the outdated beliefs causing chaos in your life and relationships. Each form of therapy will be expanded upon based on my personal research findings to help create real change in your life. Okay, so I'm going to read from. Let me read a little bit of this first. I'm going to read what she has here in chapter 1. What is attachment theory? Attachment theory is the study of how childhood experiences with our caregivers affect adulthood relationships. It was jointly developed by John Bowley and Mary Ainsworth in the 1960s. Mary Ainsworth was a graduate of the University of Toronto and specialized in security theory, which emphasizes a child's dependence on their caregiver. Ainsworth, however, sought out a position to work with Bowlby due to his reformulated approach to traditional psychology. I'm going to skip a little bit here. And attachment styles, or the way in which different types of childhood experience emerge in adulthood, come in 4 basic forms. The first is the dismissive avoidant. The second is the fearful avoidant. The third is the anxious attachment. And the fourth is the secure attachment. The one that we all want to get to if we're not there is the secure attachment. So first up is the dismissive avoidant. Someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style will generally appear withdrawn, be highly independent, be emotionally distant in their relationships, be less likely to connect on an intimate level, find it difficult to be highly involved with their partners, become overwhelmed when they are relied on heavily, retreat physically and emotionally as a result. Their core beliefs, or the recurring perceptions that replay in their subconscious, excuse me, or perpetuate a sense of defectiveness and uncertainty in relationships. They essentially believe at an innermost level that they are unsafe around people and that vulnerability always results in pain. Excuse me for a moment. Although the dismissive avoidant may appear to have shortcomings in their relationships, as do those with all attachment styles, they can actually be wonderful partners. By having a deeper understanding of why someone is dismissive avoidant, a relationship can be healthier, happier, and more fulfilling. So I'm going to skip a little bit because I don't want to read the entire section, but then she talks about how adults who are dismissive avoidant typically had parents who were absent from their childhood. It can be in the form of physical, emotional, or intellectual abandonment. So then I'm going to go down to the next one. Fearful avoidant. An individual who is fearful avoidant will often demonstrate ongoing ambivalence in relationships. They constantly shift between being vulnerable with their partner and being distant. This behavior is consistent across all their relationships, regardless of whether they are romantic. Generally express depth of processing, a tendency to overanalyze micro expressions, body language, and language for signs of betrayal. This occurs because they had an untrusting relationship with their caregivers in childhood. Living with a parent who is an addict or emotionally unwell are two examples of what may create this distrust. They do not trust naturally. They often feel as if betrayal is always on the horizon. The core wound for this attachment style revolve around feeling unworthy, being taken advantage of, and feeling unsafe. Why is the fearful avoidant individual so unpredictable? Their core wounds and tumultuous behavior typically stem from some form of childhood abuse. However, this abuse is paired with one or both parents also being emotionally supportive at infrequent times. I'm going to skip ahead. Let's see. Okay. Moreover, since they perceived love as a chaotic entity from a young age, they tend to have immense internal conflicts as adults. They simultaneously want to feel a sense of connection while subconsciously believing it to be a threat. This produces feelings of resentment or frustration that can be later projected onto relationships. I'm going to skip ahead to the anxious attachment. Someone with an anxious attachment is generally highly self-sacrificing in order to people please. They fear rejection. They have a strong fear of being abandoned. Like the fearful avoidant attachment style, the anxious attachment style results from inconsistency in childhood. However, in the case of the anxious attachment, inconsistency is largely derived from absenteeism rather than abuse by or the dysfunction of a caregiver. Ultimately, what cultivates an anxious attachment is a child in the absence of a predictable and consistent caregiver. Their core wounds will include feelings of inadequacy and the expectation of rejection, since attention from their parent was continually given, then taken away. Inconsistent parenting can also be the result of a supportive but often absent parent or other scenarios where a parent has the capacity to attune to their child but not always the availability. And then she goes on to give an example of what that looks like, but I'm going to skip ahead here. Okay, the anxious attachment will often overcompensate in friendships and romantic relationships to avoid rejection, but this inevitably results in resentment. For the anxious attachment, this is because there is often confusion between compromise and sacrifice. They will often fail to recognize the difference between the two, one being a temporary shift in needs versus the total abandonment of them, and this often breeds conflict long term. Excuse me. Over time, the anxious attachment can often perpetuate unhealthy habits, feel a lack of self-worth, and experience failed relationships. Although these feelings are triggered from the anxious attachment's core wounds, they can be healed in relationships that are validating, available, and affectionate. The anxious attachment can be an amazing partner and truly grow into themselves. Next section, secure attachment. Those with a secure attachment style are secure in relationships, are generally supportive, available, and open with their friends or partners, can help shift those of other attachments into a more secure space, and with the proper tools can ensure they become secure altogether. So I don't think I really need to read what the childhood of someone who has a secure attachment style is like. It just says that they had available and supportive parents. They were taught that you can be safe while being vulnerable and that their needs are worthy of being met. So as you can see, if any of those types sound like anything or anyone that you have known, you can see how understanding this really can help you in your relationships, not just And you're not just looking at another person's attachment style and learning about it, but your own. Because if you can recognize your own triggers, then it'll help you not to take things so personal when your partner or your friend does something that's not personal at all or not meant to be, and they weren't trying to offend you or they weren't trying to hurt you or abandon you or whatever trigger their action causes in you. So in chapter 2, she talks about this. She talks about how attachment theory applies to you. So chapter 2 examines two important concepts: how attachment styles are fluid and how to discover your attachment style. You will come to learn that your attachment style can vary among types of relationships, such as friendships, romantic relationships, or familial relationships. For example, if one friend begins to perpetuate a toxic relationship, it does not necessarily mean that the subconscious beliefs created will be brought into romantic relationships. This is absolutely true because I think that we do have different expectations for our romantic partners that we do, or excuse me, romantic relationships that we do, maybe from someone who's a friend. So how we view what we need or what we expect from them will be a little bit different. So she also talks about how this chapter will explore how subconscious beliefs in one area of one kind of relationship, such as with one specific friendship, can then spread to other friendships and create challenges. By understanding how your attachment style can flex and be shaped, you will be able to better understand what kind of attachment you have in different areas of your life. Once you understand this concept in more detail, you can take a quiz to truly find out where your attachments lie. In the following chapters, you will be taught how to move your attachment style toward a more secure attachment. So then she goes into how you find your attachment style in this chapter. And let me see if I can find just maybe yes, this is what I want. I want to find an example where she talks about some actual people. Let me see, where does it start? Okay, so imagine there was a girl named Sophie. She experienced physical abuse as a child and has come to feel unsafe and uncomfortable while being vulnerable in her romantic relationships. However, her partner Riley has a secure attachment because she was raised by supportive parents. Consequently, Riley continuously supports Sophie and validates her emotions. This makes Sophie feel worthy of love and safe in the relationship. Over time, Sophie's subconscious belief that vulnerability is unsafe begins to be reprogrammed because Riley has shown her, through a combination of repetition plus emotion, that her childhood subconscious beliefs are outdated. This is how one begins to shift into a different form of attachment in a specific relationship. So let's see. Okay, so she says here, however, Sophie could still be subject to abuse when she sees her parents, which is what perpetuates her fearful avoidant side in her parental relationship. This occurrence can be seen across all attachment styles and can even be reversed for the secure partner. So let's see. I'm just looking. There was a story in here. Let me see if I can. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because there was a story, or there's a section in here that talks about two friends, and it was really, I think it would be really helpful. But while I'm looking through here, there's an attachment theory quiz. And as you go through this, you can determine what your attachment style is. So that's very helpful. It's 60 questions that you'll answer, and then you'll look at the key, and it'll tell you which of the 4 attachment styles you have. And then it's the same thing for a friend or partner. They would need to complete the quiz as well. So let me see. Well, I don't know why I didn't think of that story that I saw when I was actually, excuse me, first thinking to go through this book. But let me see. Okay, then she has this section here that says a secure and insecure attachment style. So this is if you're secure and you meet someone who's secure. If life were perfect, all relationships would include two securely attached partners. Two secure partners will generally experience ease in expressing their feelings and needs to one another. As mentioned in Chapter 1, the securely attached individual had caregivers that were good at meeting their needs consistently. If a relationship is open, honest, and equal, both people feel independent and can readily give and take when need be. They turn to their partner when they need to and feel supported. There is also a healthy capacity to compromise and to express vulnerability. For example, one partner may say, "I know you are stressed and feeling overwhelmed today, but I would really appreciate if you could be more present with me when you have the opportunity." Validation is given for what the person is feeling emotionally. Conflict is a necessary part of human interaction. It is how we break down invisible walls and perceived imbalances in a relationship. Conflict often creates deeper bonds between two individuals when effectively resolved, and it can still take place between two securely attached individuals. That's very true. I recall, hearing several people who have been married for a very, very long time. They talk about how the conflicts that they've had over the years is what actually made their relationship stronger and brought them closer together, because they were able to work through the conflict and it gave them a new understanding of their partner. And no matter what the conflict was, as long as they were able to work through it, it gave them a new understanding of their partner and helped their relationship. I was about to say something else and I forgot just that quickly. Anyways, so a secure person tends to work very well with their dismissive avoidant partner. Secure partners will sometimes feel like their dismissive avoidant counterpart is mysterious or confusing. Since the dismissive avoidant is highly independent, a secure partner may want more closeness or commitment in the relationship. So these are different. She has different blocks here. Like the first one was secure with secure. So the second one is a secure with a dismissive avoidant. The next one is secure with fearful avoidant. So then she has secure with anxious. So I'll read a little bit of this one. While the secure and anxious relationship can have its challenges, this duo often works well together after their initial pain points are worked through. The anxious partner can be very needy and insecure at first. They put themselves down and put their partner on a pedestal. The secure partner is available to give the positive reinforcement and validation that the anxious partner craves. Over time, with emotional stability and reprogramming, many of the anxious individual's patterns will change to feelings of stability, and they will require less attention and support from the secure partner. This is interesting because there's another book that I have that I'm actually going to review as well, or I've read through it. And it talks about the same thing. Basically, it talks about how we need to be partnered to heal the pain that we've experienced in the past. Like, no one can truly heal themselves without partnering with someone to do that. And it's so, I guess it kind of makes sense, because if the hurt came from a person, I guess it makes sense that it will be reversed by a person. So it's really interesting the way that our brains work and how that just all works out. So then she has the dismissive avoidant and secure attachment style. Oh, she has dismissive avoidant with dismissive avoidant. So she talks about how dismissive avoidants they're not clingy or needy. They rely on themselves and don't feel pressure to provide emotional commitment in the relationship, and there's less conflict and less involvement. The lows are that the dismissive avoidant may find it difficult to commit or connect deeply due to the lack of sharing. The dismissive avoidants may simply walk away before the relationship becomes too involved. Okay, so there's their dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant, and dismissive avoidant, anxious attachment. So yeah, just reading through these different pairings that she put in, once you find what yours is and what your partner's is, you'll be able to really see how things are the way they are why things may be the way that they are in your relationship and why you're struggling in certain areas. And like I said before, it will give you a new compassion for your partner that you may not have had before. But you really do have to be willing to go through the book and gain an understanding of everything that she's saying here. So I wanted to see. Okay, so in chapter 3, she talks about overcoming negative interactions. In this chapter, she talks about exploring the benefits of overcoming negative interactions in the form of arguments, misunderstandings, and harbored resentment. So she says acceptance and commitment therapy is one way to cope with arguments with romantic partners, friends, or family members. It focuses on mindfulness strategies that help us move from a reactionary perspective into a reflective mindset. By doing this, we are able to better identify how we feel and expend our own energy on positive solutions. Okay, so I'm looking to see if this is there's a story in here that I wanted to read to you. And it wasn't too long. Okay, yeah, this is the one. So, throughout this chapter, we will focus on how two people in a romantic relationship overcome an argument. Imagine there is a fearful avoidant named Alia and an anxious attachment named Lincoln. They continuously argue over Alia spending too much time away from home, at work, with friends, and so on. Recently, she was even late for their anniversary dinner. So, what can Alia and Lincoln do to overcome their negative interactions? To begin to answer this question, the underlying associations that each partner has in the situation must be unpacked. So let's see. No, this isn't it. Sorry. Well, I'm just looking to see if maybe there was. Okay, I'll read this about this situation. This will probably be helpful. Recall Alia and Lincoln's argument over her presence in the relationship. Imagine she is late to her anniversary dinner with Lincoln because she had a very important work deadline that she had to meet that evening. For Lincoln, the anxious attachment, Alia's tardiness triggers his core fear of abandonment. He feels incredibly anxious, and adrenaline radiates throughout his body as he wonders if Alia's distance is a result of a shift in her feelings. However, Alia feels overwhelmed by Lincoln's clinginess and recoils. For the fearful avoidant, an abundance of emotional connection feels unsafe. In the moment, both forget that their response is a result of the core wounds that their attachment style perpetuates. Okay, and I think I'm going to stop here because that's pretty much the gist of this. It's just understanding that a lot of times our responses to others is a result of our core wounds and our attachment styles. So I definitely recommend getting this book because it's just really a good book. And step 2, she talks about how to identify unmet needs, because a lot of times what will happen is we won't even be aware of what our unmet needs are. We think we will be. Like, for example, you may have an unmet need for attention, but that may show up as looking like something else, and you won't even realize that it's just that you want some attention. It'll show up like, I don't know, you want to be taken out, or you want a meal cooked for you, or if you're a man, when really it's just that you feel like your partner's not giving you enough attention. So understanding your unmet needs will help you to communicate better with your partner, so you can be specific with them about what it is that you need. And first of all, be clarify with yourself. You'll gain some clarity and understanding, and so you can change your thought process around the whole thing. So the last thing I'll read here is she puts key points to remember. Needs do not only stem from your attachment style. Personality needs are the subconscious strategies you've programmed with the most positive over negative associations to get your 6 basic human needs met. According to the Habits of Well-Being from the work of Tony Robbins, the 6 basic human needs are love and connection, significance, certainty, uncertainty, growth, contribution. So I'm going to stop right here. And I hope you enjoyed this review. And I really hope that you will get this book. And I guess the thing to ask yourself before you try to sit down and go through this book with your partner would probably be just maybe ask yourself if the good times outweigh the bad. I know that there are a lot of relationships that people rightfully want to leave, but I guess just ask yourself if the good times outweigh the bad. Are you being unreasonable maybe about some of the things that you or your expectations, which again could come from your attachment style? So just think about that before you try to sit down with the person. Do they have a willingness to even go through this book with you? Are they serious about your relationship, strengthening your relationship or continuing your relationship? And again, even if, ask yourself first, even if that's something that you want to do, and you can gain clarity by just asking yourself if the good times outweigh the bad. So I hope that you enjoyed this review. I know I was a little bit all over the place. I did take some notes, and then when I started going through the book, it's just such an interesting book, and there was so much that I wanted to share that I did jump around a bit. But I hope that you enjoyed the review, and I hope that you will get this book. Alrighty, thank you for listening.